Right, joining me now in the studios to discuss these allegations of vote buying and issues arising from the conduct of the elections, we have Sam Itodo, who is the executive director of Yaga Africa, and Honorable Henry Mbachu. He is a member of the Young Progressives Party and in the Anambra State House of Assembly, but he's in our offsite studio. We'll be getting to him later. So, Sam, I would say very warm welcome to Newsnight.
Thanks for having me.
The issues are ever recurring. They're never going away. Voters apathy, voters merchandising. You know, you guys have a new name for it now. You know, trading votes or something like that. You know. Why are we still in that bracket? We aren't making progress, are we?
I don't think we're making any progress. This election has demonstrated that, first, you have a political class that will continue to weaponize poverty and will do everything possible to influence voting choices. In the Anambra elections, we clearly saw instances of vote buying and votes sold for as high as 10, 15,000 from our observation.
What's the preponderance? Sorry to cut you there, but what is the preponderance of these votes buying, the apathy itself again? I mean, if you have to put it on a scale.
Well, if you have to put it on a scale, I would say that there were widespread cases of vote buying. Yaga Africa was part of an election observation hub where you had 7 organizations, the Kuka Center, the Nigerian Women Trust Fund, TAF Africa, the International Press Center, Center for Media and Society, Elect Her. These were the 7 organizations, and we jointly deployed 711 observers across the entire state. And each of these organizations actually reported cases of vote buying. In fact, in some places, and one of the things we have to be very conscious about is the fact that there are now sophisticated ways of buying votes. In some instances,
they don't go with cash.
In some instances, the cash were deployed to the local to the polling units. In some places, we saw how POS were also used, and in some cases, you have political mercenaries who were taking records, you know, of voters for post-voting inducement. The EFCC is reported to have arrested only 3 persons. But if you look at the cases, there are more than 3 persons. And if all, you know, all stakeholders have built consensus that, yes, there was massive vote buying, then there's a great need for accountability. When you look at the issue of turnout as well, that's quite disturbing. And it's not just for Anambra State. I think it must be noted that in the last election in 2021, only 10% of registered voters showed up to cast their vote. This time, 21%. So we have about a 10% increase. So if between 2021 and 2025, what we record is just 10% increase, it really lays credence to the urgency for a national conversation about voter turnout in our elections, because it's not just Anambra. In the 2023 elections, only 25% of people showed up. It has grave implications for democratic legitimacy. And also, if we're not careful, it says a lot about the health of our democracy.
And the credibility?
If citizens are not showing up to exercise their franchise, because that's the opportunity you have to demonstrate that you are a collective sovereign. And if they're not maximizing that opportunity, then I think that all lovers of democracy need to be worried that voters are not showing up, even when it is clear that INEC has done its bit to provide an enabling environment for you to exercise your franchise. The security agency is also deployed massively, you know, to protect voters. How is it that voters still didn't show up? There's something missing somewhere. And
could it be the issue of voters' education? I know you mentioned, you know, elite suppression, you know, inducement, pauperization of the people. You get the point? So that they can always get the votes. Now they've moved away. It looks as if there's a little improvement. Now we don't hear of ballot boxes, you know, being snatched, figures being written, you know, behind the polling units and the rest. INEC stepping up on its game? Or is it because this is an off-season election?
You know, well, to a large extent, this election, if you want to assess INEC's performance, you say to a great extent there's been a marked improvement. And because when you think about election logistics, INEC did improve on election logistics. Since 2013, you know, till 2025, until 2025, Anambra is known for late commencement of accreditation and voting. In fact, in 2021, based on our data, only 17% of polling units opened at 7:30. But in this election, INEC improved, and you had about 49% of polling units actually reporting that they had opened. Now, that's less than 50%, but it's a marked improvement. If you look at the IREV functioned optimally. Just 4 hours after the close of polls, and close to about 6 hours, all the results were already on the INEC results viewing portal. So in terms of efficiency, INEC greatly improved. The bigger question really rests on the part of our political class. And I say that this election was not as competitive as one would have expected. And there are several factors that you need to look at. Because when we think about elections, we don't just look at the politics, we look at the political. And the political in this instance is that could it be that at the federal level, there wasn't any pressure on the institutions, you know, to influence the overall outcome, or there is actually something else. And I say that for this particular election, INEC performed creditably well. There is greater need for improvement. However, the whole point about vote buying, the fact that there were still logistical challenges, and also this level of turnout really gives us serious cause to worry, because there are 3 major elections next year. February, you have the FCT Municipal Area Council elections, you have Ekiti and Osun. The most controversial perhaps might be the Osun elections. When we get there, we would like to see these institutions also demonstrate this level of resilience, this level of efficiency, as well as integrity.
And even for the IRF to work, because INEC says they are still insisting that gradually they'll synchronize the voting or electoral system in Nigeria electronically.
You know, one of the things the Anambra election has shown us is shown us that our institutions can work if they are let alone to do their job.
If they are people of integrity.
Exactly. Even the security agencies were also professional in their management of. They were very professional, and you clearly see that there wasn't any interference. But if you look at previous elections, it wasn't the case. So something is revealing from the Anambra elections that the biggest challenge for our elections are not technical. They are political in every respect. If politicians resist the allure, the temptation to put pressure on our democratic institutions like INEC, like our security agencies, I bet our democracy would flourish. The bigger challenge is this undue interference with INEC's functions, with the security agencies, compromising them in a way that you want to ensure that a particular outcome, even when it's at variance with the will of the people. But as far as we are concerned as Yaga Africa, as we mentioned earlier today, that when you look at the results that were declared today, they were a clear reflection of the results that were announced at the polling units. So and to that extent, you can say that the integrity of the election was guaranteed.
And the will of the people prevailed, even though, I mean, you just, the statistics shows just slight improvement in voters' turnout and the rest. And again, given credence to the integrity of the election, to a very, very large extent, it was violence-free, except for the ugly incident at the border of Imo and Anambra states.
Yeah, in 2021, it seemed like we were preparing for war. But in this election, it was completely different. There wasn't any sort of substantial or significant negative
disruption,
incident. Yes, you can give credit to the security agencies, but then when the security agencies deployed over 55,000 personnel, the bigger question is there a nexus between this overall outcome and the deployment? My sense is, I think that the people of Anambra were determined to have a peaceful elections, and they got it. I also think that the security agencies prior to election day did a fantastic job in ensuring that the environment was safe and secure. Okay. But if the environment is safe and secure, INEC was ready to deploy and voters didn't show up, it then means that the political actors are either not speaking in the language that people understand, because the language that people understand is not commercialization or vote buying, because if it is, you would have recorded higher turnout. It's about delivering quality governance, improving the socio-economic conditions of people. And until that is done, people will see no reason why they should come out in large numbers to cast their vote.
All right, let me put you on pause there, because our guest in the offsite studios is ready for us. Now, Henry Mbachu is a Labour Party member of Anambra State House of Assembly. I inadvertently said it was a YPP member. That's the only opposition member in Anambra State House of Assembly. Thanks for joining us. How would you want to score the governorship election as an opposition member in a predominantly dominated Abga state? Henry?
Hello, good evening, and thank you, Christian. Thank you, viewers. Thank you, Yaga Africa, for giving an unalloyed analysis of whatever that happened in Anambra yesterday. The election in Anambra, if I should score, I won't score it in totality. I have to score by institutions, systems by system. I think INEC did pretty well. I would score INEC 60% to 70%. Security agencies, I would score security agencies 70%, but because it was generally peaceful. But like every arrow will point towards the general concern of our democracy. The vote buying was massive and reckless. It was in this studio and many other studios that the journalists and everywhere in Nigeria were shouting about, even when the candidates were making promises, monetary promises for winning the award and their polling unit and others. But what is disheartening is that the threshold at which this vote buying occurred yesterday is alarming. It's alarming when you imagine a party sending in allegedly whopping 400 million to one local government. What is the hope of a common man? Ghana, we are talking about our electoral system activities being very overly expensive, very expensive. The general election, we are going to be having the House of Assembly members coming up, House of Rep and Senate. If this kind of fund is deployed, I will bet you none of anybody in the House that win that election, if it's going to be based on vote buying, will be able to deliver any dividend of democracy. Mind you, the danger is, in economic crime, there are limits to the consequences. One can steal money, do whatever, there are limits to the consequences. But when you touch a social crime is where we are diving into, where the hope, the voice of a common man, which is that voter's card, is being sacrificed at the altar of commercialization. That is the end of democracy. Yes, I was discussing with some of my colleagues that were citing instances of developed democracy like United States. They said they call it lobby. I said, no, you can leverage on someone's influence to garner vote. That is fine. But when it's now like a marketplace where you set out voter's card and you're telling people, vote this one, show me a picture, I will credit you 10,000, 15,000, 20,000. Whoever that will say that there was no vote buying, and approximately 80% of the polling unit should come and meet me anywhere, I will show proof. But what we should also be looking at is this. If our security agencies have done their work, the federal government should be raking minimum of 2 billion naira in IGR from Anambra State in just this election. When you go to our Electoral Act,
how would
the penalty for vote buying in the court is 12 months imprisonment of 500,000 naira. I can assure you that over 5,000 polling units in Anambra State shared money in their polling unit from various parties. I'm not singling any party out now. From various parties. So 500,000 naira as penalty, which someone would like to pay than going into prison, will give us...
So, Henry, it's a common criminality of the elite politician, you know, deliberately disenfranchising the people by buying their votes and the rest. But, Sam, let me ask you here, Itodo, is it possible with that kind of humongous amount of money, like, raised by Henry, 400 million naira to each local government during this election period?
Your question is it possible? Well, with Nigerian politicians, everything is possible. I know for a fact that the night before the day of voting, if you go to most of the hotels, you clearly see, perhaps even one of the hotels, you saw how there was stash of money in Ghana must go bags. I saw them with my own eyes being exchanged, and they were preparing them for deployment. They were deployed the night of the election. So I wouldn't rule that out because the rate at which votes were procured in this election, it's just a testament of the fact that there's something fundamentally wrong either with our financial system. Because I kept asking myself, how did these individuals gain access to this amount of cash? And they were putting them in Ghana must go bags, and they were deploying them, to the local governments the night before the election.
So why the financial crimes agencies not detecting that when you have such humongous amounts of money being moved few days to elections? Let me just quickly come to you, Henry Mbachu, to round up this conversation. What would you think is going to be the way forward? I mean, it's a collective guilt from all the political parties. They've been accused that they are not even doing well in educating, in enlightening their members and the voting populace.
Let me tell you for a fact. Build up to this election, you will find out that most of the candidates were not actually campaigning on projects, program, and what they intend to do for the masses. They were all campaigning based on bully and who gets what and how we're going to get it. But you have watched the election, in our general election of 2023, you find when a candidate like Itodo was saying, well, we're not going to give shishi. It became a mantra. It gingered people up. I benefited from that. I didn't share 1 naira in my constituency, and I won. Was there vote buy-in? Yes. My opponent, did they share money in the polling unit? Yes. I didn't share 1 naira, and I won the election. The people were determined, spurred by the vision that was engineered by the various candidates along the party line. You see, that alone can bring out people, and if we continue on that trench, we are going somewhere. But with this, no. Any well-meaning Nigerian that likes democracy, that wants it to work, that wants it to be free and fair. We talk about freeness and fairness of election. It has to be free first. But now we are purchasing it. We are making it transactional.
All right. Honorable Henry Mbachu, the Labour Party member of the Anambra State House of Assembly, opposition member. Thanks for joining us on Newsnight on the review of the governorship election in Anambra State. And Sam Itodo, Executive Director of Yaga Africa, is a regular friend here analyzing Nigeria's electoral system and democratic development. Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thanks for having me. Always a delight.
All right.